Welcome back to Lessons Learned. I'm Sherry, and today we're going to make an apron. A very simple apron and a very cute apron, and we're going to use 5-inch charm squares. You can use an actual charm pack, but we're only going to need 30 of the squares. So I have some picked out here that would make a cute apron. This one's very colorful and kind of country. It's called Shine On by Bonnie and Camille for Moda. And then I also have a Corey Yoder Cozy Up by Moda that would make actually a very cute apron with the gingham in there. And then I also have some Cave, but just remember we only need 30 of our squares. So that is an option, but then I also have all of these scraps. 5-inch scraps. They are leftovers from other charm packs where I didn't use all the squares, and some of them are just yardage that I have cut into squares from my scrap pile. So I think what I'm going to do to start out with this pattern is to pull out 30 that kind of coordinate. Here at the top I have a whole bunch of red and white I could use. Those would all go together, or I could pick out florals or batiks. Any combination. I could just make it totally scrappy as well. So let me pull out 30 from here, I think, and I'll lay those out here on either on the table or on the board so you can see how this is going to go together. So hang on, there will be instruction on how to make this in detail, and then also in the description box you will find all the fabric requirements and some basic instructions. So let's get to it. Okay, so here's what I ended up with. I just went through all of my random 5-inch squares that I had cut and put into my scrap stash, and picked out a lot of kind of medium to dark colors. There's a few brights in there, but nothing really super light. So moved some things around until I've got a good saturation of color evenly across the square there. And so as you can see, I have 5 squares going across and 6 squares down. So the first step is going to be to sew the 5 squares across together until we end up with 6 rows, and then we'll sew our 6 rows together to form this square that we will be cutting our apron out of. Alright, so I've sewn my 5 squares horizontal together with a 1/4-inch seam, and I like to open my seams and press them. And then our next step is going to be to join the 6 rows together with a 1/4-inch seam. So where there are intersections in those squares, you want to try to match those up as best as you can. They don't have to be perfect, but in theory they should be sitting right on top of each other. So as you do the long rows, just be careful of that. You can certainly pin those intersections or clip them as well before you sew. Alright, so we've got all our horizontal rows sewn together into one square of fabric. This is measuring approximately 23 or so wide by 27 long. So at this point we need to find another piece of fabric that is that size. So you need at least 3/4 of a yard, and we're going to actually make this reversible, or you can use a plain back for it, but we are going to sew right sides together and flip it. So before that though, we're going to have to make some straps, some ties, something to go around the neck, and that will be included in our project here as we're sewing those 2 pieces of fabric together. So our ties will be on the inside as we're sewing around the edges, and then when we turn it right side out, our ties will be there. So and the neck, the thing around the neck. So first though, find your 3/4 of a yard of fabric to go on the back side, and then also I'm going to show you how to cut out for the arm area, the armhole area. So we'll be doing that next. Okay, so now we're going to cut out for the armhole. I have my other fabric underneath with the right sides together, so that way I can keep it together after I cut out this armhole, and then I'll be able to just lay that under the sewing machine and sew all around the edges. So we're going to lose some of our squares here. We're actually only going to end up with our middle one and part of these 2 right here, so you'll have some scraps left over. Yes, you could essentially just leave those 2 squares off if you wanted to, but it's just easier to work with squares to start with. So you're going to estimate about halfway through this one and halfway through one to this one. Let's see. It's going to go through here. Yes, it's going to be halfway through this one. I'm using a really big marker so you can see what I'm doing, hopefully. So we're also going to go through about 1 inch of this here and 1 inch here. So essentially your curve is going to be like this, okay? So you're going to have to freehand that, or you can actually just kind of give yourself some dots down to your next area and over and then back around and then connect those dots. So another thing you could do is just get a platter or something and make a line around that as a guide, but it's not quite a dinner plate. It's more of an angle than just a round dinner plate or something big and round. So, you know, something oblong-ish would work the best. I'm gonna go ahead and connect my dots so you can kind of see how this is gonna come out like this. And you're only going to have to do one side, because then you can fold this over and copy your exact line over here that you made. So let me go ahead and show you how that's going to happen. I'm going to get my fabric scissors. I'm going to keep this steady, not let anything shift. And then here's my other side. So I'm just lining up my edges along here so that it would be an even armhole on both sides. So you can see how I did that. Okay, so I'm just gonna go through here like this and get them both at the same time. Okay, so there we go. So there's our 2 pieces, and we're just gonna leave these folded over each other and sew around the edges. But first we have to make our ties and our neck strap. So what I'm going to do, I have an abundance of some binding from another project. So this is 2.5 inches, I think. No, it's 2 inches. You could use 2.5 inches if you have some. If you have some 2.5 inch strips, you could use that if you have some of those you want to hook together. But I folded it in half. This is the way I used it before in the other project, and then I probably put it on as binding around something. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this and see where that fold line is. I'm going to fold into the center one side, and then I'm going to fold in the other side, and then I'm going to fold it back up again where the original fold was. I'm going to go to the iron and iron this entire piece that I need, and then go to the sewing machine and sew down the open edge. And you can actually sew all the way around on both sides if you want. So let me go ahead and do that, and then I'll show you how to put these on this project so that they come out right once you turn the thing right side out. Okay, so here we are at the top of our apron. I have my straps done that I just finished on the sewing machine, and I need to position these about 1/2 inch in. I measured to see how long this needed to be for my neck size, and it's about 29 inches. So your first piece for your neck is 29 inches. So I've pinned over here and out of the way the bulk of that length, because I don't want to get it caught in my seam allowances as I'm sewing. So I'm going to go ahead and move this back up here. This is exactly 1/2 inch over. You can measure that with a ruler, make sure you get it right, and then pin that in place. And then the same thing over here, and you want to make sure you don't twist it. So that's 1/2 inch, and I'm bringing my edges of my other piece over and pinning that. Now my straps for around the waist are going to be coming off of the very bottom of this armhole. So you need to go down 1/2 inch for that. And then I've got my tails pinned over here with a pin. That's a pin right there and a pin right there, and that's to keep these ties from getting wild and out of their place and into your seam allowances. We don't want that. We only want to sew it down right here. So I'm going to go ahead and match those up again, and that's a 1/2 inch away from the top corner there. And then the same thing on the other side. Just go a 1/2 inch down and then bring your other fabric over and pin that. So now what we have to do, you can pin this all the way around, which I recommend that you do. And see, there our ties are out of the way, especially around this armhole. Do not stretch this, just lightly hold it as you're going through your sewing machine, because this is on the bias now, and then you'll be sewing across here. So you can start anywhere, but I think what I would recommend is putting your turning hole down here and make it 5 or 6 inches open. So start here and go around your corner, turn your corner, go up, turn your corner, around here, across, down the other armhole, down the side, and back over. So you can actually mark this with a pen if you want right now. And then that will be, sometimes I'll, just to make sure that's exactly where I want to stop, I'll put a different color pen there, or 2 pens in this case, and that alerts me, hey, don't go past this, because that's our hole we're going to turn it. So I'm going to go ahead and pin this all the way around and take it to the sewing machine and start sewing. 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay, so I've got all my sewing done. I left my opening down here. I can get my hand in there to turn it. I've got my regular scissors, my pinking shears, and my point turner. So you can leave your raw edges of your seam allowance the way they are if you want, and at a minimum, just clip off your corners and don't cut into your seam allowances, of course. Just cut within about a 1/16 to an 1/8 of that edge there, and then you can go ahead and turn it and press it and be done with it. I like my pinking shears, and I like taking more bulk out of seams if I can, but if you want a little sturdier seams on your apron, you can certainly do that. But I'm just going to go down through here and cut off about half of my seam allowance, because you know I love my pinking shears. As I approach my opening here, I'm not going to pink those. Okay, so usually with an armhole, you clip the curvy part. It's probably not totally necessary on this, but just take your sharpest scissors that you have with the point and go about every inch or so on that little curve right there. Just the curved part right here. And that way when we turn it out, we won't have any little folded places where that curve is. So now we're almost ready to go ahead and turn it. Don't forget you've got pins in there that's holding those straps down, those ties and the neck, so don't get poked by those. Let me go ahead and pull my pins out, because I will inevitably poke myself. Okay, so we're starting to see it now. This is exciting. So I'm going up to the neck area, or the chest area. There's where my strap is for my neck. So those turned out pretty good and even. There it is. And you know, if this does turn out too long, you can always tie a little knot in it. You can also cut it and tie it, but I wouldn't do that. Unless you want them to be ties, you'd probably want to make them longer than the 29 that I did, but you can do it that way, and that way it's adjustable. So let me get my point turner in there and make sure I've got those out nice and pointy, sharp. And then here are my side ties. This turned out pretty good on the side. Down here at the bottom. And there we go. So I'm going to go press this out nice and even. There's another one up there. Let me get him turned out. See how our ties just came right at the top there at the armhole around the waist. There you go. So I'm going to iron these down nice and flat, and I'll come back and show you how to close this up here. Okay, so here's my super cute scrappy apron, even using scrappy leftover binding for the ties and the neck, and it is reversible. You can do it this way as well. will be nice as well if you wanted to just have that side showing. My opening is still open. I just flipped those ends in a 1/2 inch, the seam allowance. So what we need to do now is go around the edge at about 1/8 of an inch all the way around, and then we're done, and I will model it for you. All right, here she is. I'm using my body double today. I haven't unpadded her since I lost some weight, but this will tell you that this will probably go up to like a 14 or 16. I'm currently about a 12. So aprons are kind of universal as far as size. One size fits all, kind of. So there she is. That's 30 charm squares. And then I did shorten my neck strap to about 6 inches less. So I think I would do somewhere in the 23, 24 range of inches for that. And then my ties for the front, or for the back actually, will tie all the way into the front. And that's with those being 40 inches each. So there we have it. A very quick and cute and scrappy reversible apron. I hope you make one. See you soon.